The rich kids at the elite school were enjoying humiliating scholarship student Sarah, telling her, "You don't belong here." They had no idea that Sarah was the nation's youngest science Olympiad champion and a NASA intern. But let's go back to the beginning. Westfield Academy stood like a monument to privilege in the heart of Greenwich, Connecticut. The $60,000 per year private school was where Wall Street executives, tech moguls, and old money families sent their children to network with future power brokers. The campus looked more like a luxury resort than a high school, with its marble columns, manicured gardens, and state-of-the-art facilities that most universities would envy. Sarah Chen walked through these hallowed halls every morning feeling like an intruder in a museum. At 16 years old, she was one of only 12 scholarship students among Westfield's 800 pupils. Her mother worked double shifts as a nurse to afford even the basic expenses that came with attending such an exclusive institution, while her father drove for a rideshare company between his engineering classes at the local community college. Sarah's scholarship covered tuition, but it couldn't buy her the designer clothes, luxury cars, or weekend trips to the Hamptons that defined social currency at Westfield. She carried her books in a worn backpack from Target, wore the same 3 outfits rotated throughout the week, and ate lunch alone in the library while her classmates dined at expensive restaurants off campus. What made Sarah's situation even more isolating was her academic performance. While most Westfield students coasted on their family connections and private tutors, Sarah earned perfect grades through pure intellectual ability. Her test scores were so high that teachers initially suspected cheating, until they realized that Sarah simply operated on a different cognitive level than her peers. But in the social ecosystem of Westfield Academy, being smart wasn't enough if you didn't have the right last name or zip code. The unofficial rulers of Westfield Academy called themselves the Hampton Circle, 5 students whose families owned estates in the exclusive Long Island enclave. They were led by Madison Ashworth, whose father was a hedge fund billionaire and who had inherited both his ruthless ambition and his complete lack of empathy for anyone beneath her social station. Madison was joined by her inner circle, Preston Blake, whose tech entrepreneur mother had sold her startup for $2 billion, Victoria Sterling, daughter of a federal judge whose family traced their wealth back to railroad barons, Alexander Hunt, whose pharmaceutical executive father was regularly featured in Forbes, and Sophia Pemberton, whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels across Europe. Together, they commanded the school's social hierarchy with the casual cruelty that comes from never having faced real consequences. Their Instagram accounts showed lives of constant luxury, private jets, yacht parties, shopping sprees in Paris, and exclusive events where they mingled with celebrities and politicians. To them, scholarship students like Sarah represented everything wrong with modern society's attempts at equality. They saw Sarah's presence at Westfield as a dilution of their exclusive world, a reminder that merit could sometimes challenge the natural order of inherited privilege. "I don't understand why they even let those people in here," Madison would say during their lunch conversations. "This school is supposed to be about excellence, not charity cases." The Hampton Circle had made tormenting scholarship students into a sport, documenting their cruelty on social media with hashtags like "Not Our Level" and "Know Your Place." They operated with impunity because their families were major donors to the school, and because Westfield's administration had learned long ago that protecting these students' interests was more important than protecting less influential pupils. The systematic harassment of Sarah Chen began during her sophomore year when she accidentally outperformed Madison Ashworth on the PSAT. Madison had scored an impressive 1480, a result her parents had celebrated with a $5,000 shopping spree. But Sarah's perfect 1520 score had been posted on the Academic Achievements Board, making Madison's accomplishment look ordinary by comparison. "Who does she think she is?" Madison had whispered to her circle during lunch that day. "Some little scholarship girl showing up students whose families built this school?" What followed was a carefully orchestrated campaign of social destruction. The Hampton Circle began by spreading rumors about Sarah's family background, claiming her parents were illegal immigrants. They weren't. That she had cheated on her admission tests. She hadn't. And that she was only attending Westfield to spy on wealthy families for some kind of fraud scheme, a particularly cruel invention. They would accidentally bump into Sarah in the hallways, spilling coffee on her limited wardrobe. They would reserve entire tables in the cafeteria just to force Sarah to eat alone. They would start conversations in Mandarin whenever she was nearby, pretending they knew she couldn't understand, even though Sarah was fluent in the language. Most cruelly, they began a social media campaign called Scholarship Watch, where they would post photos of Sarah throughout the school day with captions mocking her appearance, her clothes, and her obvious discomfort. These posts would receive hundreds of likes from other Westfield students who were either part of the elite crowd or too afraid to defend Sarah. The teachers and administrators were aware of the harassment, but they had learned to look the other way. When Sarah's mother tried to schedule a meeting about the bullying, she was told that social dynamics among students weren't the school's responsibility, and that perhaps Sarah would be more comfortable at a different institution. What none of her tormentors knew was that Sarah Chen lived a double life that would have impressed even the most accomplished adults. While they were posting vacation photos from their family's third homes, Sarah was conducting advanced research that was reshaping scientific understanding in multiple fields. At age 14, Sarah had been accepted into a special program at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, where she worked remotely on analyzing data from the James Webb Space Telescope. Her work on identifying potentially habitable exoplanets had contributed to 2 published papers in peer-reviewed journals, making her one of the youngest people ever to be cited in Nature Astronomy. At 15, she had won the International Science Olympiad, not just for her school or state, but for the entire United States. Her solutions to complex physics problems had been so elegant that the competition judges had requested permission to use them in textbooks. The medal ceremony had been attended by the Secretary of Education and broadcast on national television. But Sarah had never mentioned it at school. Most recently, at 16, Sarah had been offered early admission to 17 different universities, including Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and Caltech. Each had offered her a full scholarship plus research opportunities that graduate students would kill for. NASA had extended her internship and invited her to spend her senior year working directly with their team developing new propulsion technologies for Mars missions. But Sarah kept all of this secret because she had learned that academic achievement only made the bullying worse. When she had once mentioned receiving a perfect score on the chemistry AP exam, Madison had responded by starting a rumor that Sarah was selling drugs to younger students. When she had accidentally let slip that she was fluent in 4 languages, Preston had begun calling her the spy and suggesting she was gathering intelligence for foreign governments. So Sarah learned to hide her genius the same way other teenagers hide embarrassing hobbies. She kept her NASA identification badge in a locked drawer at home. She asked her university admissions counselors to mail their letters to a P.O. box rather than her house. She even created fake social media accounts under different names to post about her achievements, just to have some outlet for the pride she couldn't express at school. The breaking point came on a cold Tuesday in March, during what should have been Sarah's moment of triumph. The results of the National Merit Scholarship Competition had been announced, and Sarah had not only won the $2,500 scholarship, but had been named a Presidential Scholar, one of only 161 students nationwide to receive the honor. The award came with a personal letter from the president, inviting Sarah to a ceremony at the White House. It also came with a feature article in the local newspaper, complete with Sarah's photo and a detailed description of her academic accomplishments. For the first time, her secret achievements were becoming public knowledge. Madison discovered the article when her mother mentioned it during dinner, expressing surprise that one of Madison's classmates had achieved such recognition. Madison's immediate reaction wasn't admiration or even grudging respect. It was rage that a scholarship student had brought positive attention to Westfield Academy when that glory should have belonged to students from prominent families. The next morning, Madison arrived at school with a plan. She and her circle had spent the evening crafting what they thought would be Sarah's final humiliation, a public confrontation that would put the scholarship student back in her place and restore the natural social order. They waited until the lunch period, when the cafeteria would be full of witnesses, and approached Sarah's usual table in the corner where she sat alone, reading a quantum physics textbook. "Sarah," Madison announced loudly, ensuring her voice would carry throughout the cafeteria, "we need to talk." Sarah looked up from her book, immediately recognizing the predatory expressions on the faces surrounding her. She had learned to read these situations, to recognize when the Hampton Circle was preparing for one of their public humiliation rituals. "We've been thinking about your little newspaper article," Madison continued, pulling out her phone to record the conversation. "And we want to know why you're trying so hard to make the rest of us look bad." The cafeteria was beginning to quiet down as other students sensed drama unfolding. This was exactly the audience Madison wanted, a room full of peers who would witness Sarah being put back in her place. "I mean, seriously," Preston chimed in, his voice dripping with mock concern. "We're all trying to have a normal high school experience, and here you are, making the rest of us look lazy with your little science projects." Victoria laughed, a sound designed to be heard throughout the room. "Maybe she thinks if she tries hard enough, people will forget she doesn't actually belong here." Alexander pulled out his own phone, joining the recording party. "Sarah, can you explain to everyone why a scholarship student thinks she deserves the same recognition as students whose families actually built this institution?" But it was Sophia who delivered what was meant to be the killing blow. "I think what we're all wondering is, don't you think it's time to admit that you don't belong here? I mean, look around. This isn't your world, Sarah. These aren't your people. Maybe it's time to transfer somewhere more appropriate for your background." The cafeteria had gone completely silent. Every conversation had stopped. Every phone had been put down, and every eye was focused on the confrontation unfolding in the corner. Other students were pulling out their own phones, sensing that they were about to witness something that would be talked about for years. Sarah closed her quantum physics textbook slowly, her mind racing, not with fear or embarrassment, but with calculations. She was calculating the statistical probability that these students would continue their harassment if she remained silent. She was calculating the long-term social dynamics that would result from this moment. And she was calculating exactly how much these privileged bullies were about to underestimate her. "You really want to know if I belong here?" Sarah asked quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness. Madison grinned triumphantly. This was exactly the response she had hoped for, the scholarship student finally showing her true emotions, finally revealing how much their campaign had affected her. "Oh, we're dying to hear this," Madison said, making sure her phone was capturing Sarah's face clearly. Sarah reached into her worn backpack, the same Target backpack that the Hampton Circle had mocked for 2 years, and pulled out a simple manila folder. Her movements were deliberate and calm, as if she were conducting one of her laboratory experiments. "You want to know if I belong at Westfield Academy?" Sarah repeated, opening the folder. "Let me show you exactly where I belong." The first document she placed on the table was her NASA identification badge, the holographic security features catching the cafeteria's fluorescent lights. The badge identified her as Dr. Sarah Chen, research intern, Astrophysics Division, Goddard Space Flight Center. A murmur rippled through the watching crowd. Even Madison's confident smirk began to waver slightly. "This," Sarah said, pointing to the badge, "is my identification for my job at NASA, where I've been working since I was 14 years old. I'm currently the youngest research intern in the agency's history, and my work on exoplanet identification has been cited in over 50 published papers." She placed the next document on the table, a letter bearing the official seal of the White House. "This is my invitation to receive the Presidential Scholar Award next month in Washington, D.C. I'm one of only 161 students nationwide to receive this honor, and I'll be personally recognized by the President for my contributions to scientific research." The cafeteria was now completely silent, except for the sound of phones recording and the occasional whisper of disbelief. Sarah continued placing documents on the table with the methodical precision of someone who had spent years documenting scientific discoveries. "This is my acceptance letter from MIT, offering me a full scholarship plus a $50,000 annual research stipend. This is my acceptance letter from Harvard, offering me early admission to their doctoral program in astrophysics. This is my acceptance letter from Stanford, where I've been invited to work directly with their Nobel Prize-winning physics department." With each document, Madison's face grew paler. The other members of the Hampton Circle had stopped recording, their phones hanging limply in their hands as they realized they were no longer documenting Sarah's humiliation. They were documenting their own. "This," Sarah said, placing down a laminated certificate, "is my gold medal from the International Science Olympiad, where I represented the United States and scored higher than any competitor in the event's 30-year history." Sarah's voice remained calm and factual, as if she were presenting research findings to an academic panel, but every word was calculated to systematically dismantle the social hierarchy that had tormented her for 2 years. "You asked if I belong here," Sarah continued, placing down more documents. "Here's my IQ test result, 201. That's higher than Einstein's estimated IQ. Here's my SAT score, perfect 1600. Here's my performance on the MCAT, 528, which is the highest possible score, and which I took just for fun when I was 15. She pulled out a tablet and opened it to her LinkedIn profile, which she had kept private from her Westfield classmates. "This is my professional portfolio. I have recommendation letters from 3 Nobel Prize winners, the director of NASA and the Secretary of Energy. I've been offered research positions at CERN, the Large Hadron Collider facility in Switzerland, and the International Space Station program." The tablet screen showed a professional headshot of Sarah in a NASA laboratory wearing a white coat and safety glasses, surrounded by equipment worth millions of dollars. "Last month, I was featured on the cover of Scientific American as one of the 10 young scientists who will change the world. The article mentioned that I've already been offered tenure-track positions at 5 different universities, which I'll consider after I complete my undergraduate degree at MIT." Sarah looked directly at Madison, who was now visibly shaking. "You want to know about belonging, Madison? Your father's hedge fund manages $12 billion in assets. My research on sustainable energy has attracted $50 billion in private investment funding. Your mother sits on the board of the Met Opera. I've been invited to speak at the World Economic Forum in Davos next year." The cafeteria was so quiet that the sound of Sarah closing her folder echoed off the walls. "But the real difference between us," Sarah said, standing up from her table, "is that everything I've achieved, I've earned through my own intelligence and hard work. I didn't inherit it. I didn't buy it. I didn't have it handed to me because of my family name." The video of Sarah's revelation was uploaded to social media within minutes, and it spread faster than any content the Hampton Circle had ever created. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times across multiple platforms, with hashtags like Genius Reveal and Scholarship Queen trending worldwide. But the real impact was felt within the walls of Westfield Academy itself. Sarah's secret achievements had transformed her from the school's most bullied student into its most celebrated alumni prospect. Teachers who had ignored her began requesting meetings to discuss research opportunities. Administrators who had dismissed her mother's complaints began calling to apologize and offer additional support. The Hampton Circle found themselves in an impossible position. They had built their social power on the premise that wealth and family connections made them superior to scholarship students. But Sarah had proven that raw intelligence and actual achievement could eclipse inherited privilege in ways they had never imagined. Madison's father, upon learning about his daughter's behavior, forced her to write a public apology and donate $100,000 to scholarship programs for underprivileged students. Preston's mother required him to volunteer at a community center, teaching science to elementary school children. Victoria, Alexander, and Sophia found themselves socially isolated as other students realized that associating with them could damage their own reputations. Most importantly, Westfield Academy announced a new zero-tolerance policy for bullying, established a counseling program for scholarship students, and created academic recognition programs that would highlight intellectual achievement regardless of students' economic backgrounds. 6 months after the cafeteria confrontation, Sarah Chen walked through the halls of Westfield Academy as a completely different person. Not because she had changed, but because everyone's perception of her had changed. She was no longer the quiet scholarship student hiding in the library. She was the scientific prodigy who had redefined what it meant to excel at their elite institution. Her locker was decorated with congratulations cards from teachers, administrators, and fellow students. Her picture hung in the academic achievement hallway, not just for her Presidential Scholar Award, but for becoming the first Westfield student ever to be published in Nature, Science, and the Astrophysical Journal before graduating high school. Most significantly, Sarah had started using her platform to help other scholarship students and academically gifted children from underprivileged backgrounds. She created a mentorship program connecting Westfield scholarship students with professionals in their fields of interest. She established a summer camp for gifted children from low-income families, providing them with advanced scientific training they couldn't afford otherwise. The funny thing, Sarah reflected in an interview with the school newspaper, is that I was always proud of my achievements. I just learned to hide them because I thought it would make the bullying worse, but staying silent only made me a target. Sometimes the best way to handle bullies is to show them exactly who they're messing with. Sarah's story became a case study in educational psychology programs, examining how gifted students navigate social hierarchies and how institutions can better support academic excellence, regardless of economic background. 2 years later, as Sarah prepared to graduate as Westfield Academy's valedictorian, the school looked very different than it had when she first arrived. The culture of inherited privilege still existed, but it had been challenged by a new emphasis on actual achievement and intellectual merit. The Hampton Circle had learned to coexist with scholarship students, though their relationships remained strained. Madison had actually become somewhat of an advocate for need-based financial aid, having learned that academic brilliance could emerge from any background. The other members had developed a grudging respect for intellectual achievement, even if they still preferred the comfort of inherited wealth. Sarah's valedictorian speech focused on the theme of belonging, not belonging based on family wealth or social connections, but belonging based on contribution, character, and the courage to pursue excellence regardless of circumstances. I used to think I didn't belong at Westfield Academy, she told the assembled crowd of students, parents, and faculty. But I realized that belonging isn't about fitting into an existing culture. Sometimes belonging means changing that culture for the better. In the audience, her parents watched with tears in their eyes, knowing that their daughter had not only survived an elite institution designed to exclude people like them, but had transformed it in the process. And in the front row, wearing his NASA internship badge with pride, sat a younger scholarship student who had been inspired by Sarah's example to pursue his own dreams in aerospace engineering. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't just overcoming your own obstacles, it's removing those obstacles for everyone who comes after you. The end. If this story inspired you, hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful stories about intelligence, perseverance, and never underestimating the quiet kid in the corner. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed someone's hidden talents surprise everyone?